Hi, I'm Tori Eldridge, author of the Lily Wong mystery thriller series, The Ninja Daughter, The Ninja's Blade, and the upcoming The Ninja Betrayed. I also have short fiction in a variety of horror and suspense anthologies, including the inaugural reboot of Weird Tales magazine. But today I'm going to read a chapter from my upcoming standalone Dance Among the Flames, a darkly suspenseful tale about a desperate mother who rises from the slums of Brazil to become a powerful wielder of Quimbanda magic. It's in development right now with Running Wild Press for a May 2022 release. So this is Dance Among the Flames, Chapter 1. São Salvador, Bahia, Brazil, 1974. Serafina breathed in the salty air of São Salvador as her newborn Carlinhos shuddered in his sleep. He had gorged himself on breast milk after humiliating her on the bus with his screams. Now he dozed in sweat-drenched peace. She wiped the milk drool from his jaundiced chin and smiled, how like a male to throw a fit, take his fill, then pass out, secure in the knowledge that a woman would clean up the mess. Serafina checked for traffic, then hurried away from the boats to the bustling Mercado Modelo, the famous banana yellow market where the locals hawked their arts and crafts and tourists richer than her dined on Brazilian cuisine. Such a cheery evolution from the custom house that had stowed her ancestors as they came into port. Back then, slavers had packed her people with crates of perfume and wine. If today went as planned, Serafina would buy a bottle of each. The narrow sidewalks opened into the plaza in front of the market and afforded Serafina her first glimpse of the 63-meter elevator that connected Lower Town at sea level with Upper Town on the cliff. Long, neat buildings perched along the top of an escarpment so sheer it looked as though God had chopped the land with a giant axe. From below, faded, multicolored apartment buildings reached up from the sidewalk like the scaly fingers of an old person's hand. Even from their bustled windows and fluttering laundry, any of them would have been better than the hovel where Serafina lived. She hugged Carlinhos to her chest and darted between the buses to the other side of the avenue, where the elevador, Lacerda, would take them to the top. Usually she opted for the cheaper funicular or hitched a ride up the steep roads. Today she would travel in style. She nudged Carlinhos awake as the elevator began to climb. "Open your eyes, little one, and see what God has made." Beyond the looping roads, docks, and boats lay every shade of blue from the aqua ocean to the sapphire and azure sky. "See how it shimmers, my love, like a precious jewel only for you." Carlinhos was special. Serafina knew it, despite the sad resignation in the midwife's eyes as she had swaddled his protruding belly and concave chest. All babies were ugly at birth, and all mothers said things they didn't mean when in the throes of unbearable pain. "It hates me, and I hate it," Serafina had cried as the baby had refused to come out. The midwife clutched her beads and spat on the floor. "Foolish girl! Who knows what spirits are listening? Shut your mouth before you draw their attention to you." But Serafina was not a fool, no matter what that awful midwife had said. The shock from Serafina's dearest friend Carmen had been harder to dismiss. The older woman had nearly fallen out her window in her eagerness to hold Serafina's baby, but when she saw him had pulled away in alarm. The pity in Carmen's voice had been even worse. "No worry, querida. You're still young." "What does that have to do with anything?" Serafina had said. "You will have other children. You could save the name." "I don't need other children." "No, of course not. But if you did." The implication had followed Serafina onto the bus, ruined her mood, and caused the baby to fuss. Everyone had stared, not from admiration for Serafina's towering height and stunning beauty, but at the squirming creature in her arms. Even the woman on the window seat beside her had turned away after begging Serafina to feed the damn thing and shut it up. Serafina had never felt so embarrassed, nor as determined as she did in this moment. She and Carlinhos would prove them wrong. All he needed was a strong mother to show him the way. That way began with the cobbled avenue toward Jesus Square. As Serafina walked through the historic town named Pellerino for the pillories that used to lock the necks and wrists of disobedient slaves, she could almost hear the loud cries of the auctioneer and the softer cries of human chattel. The African slaves would have stood naked on the blocks, examined, degraded, bought, and sold. What did she have to complain about? She lived in a house, and had a baby to love, and a man who would soon take her out of the slums. Serafina had many blessings, but they did not stop her from wanting more. She dreamed of living here, in the Pellerino district of Upper Town, where pastel-colored buildings lined the road like Easter candy, and happy voices shared the gossip of the day. She fancied herself the wife of a governor, for that is surely what her lover would become, living in a great mansion that overlooked the Bay of All Saints. He would have to divorce his present wife first, but Serafina was not too worried about that. She was young and beautiful, and if she continued to do well in school, would certainly earn a high school diploma in the next 2 years. Her lover's wife was a frumpy old cow. Serafina paused in front of the giant stone cross in the center of the square and gazed at the church of São Francisco. The exterior was appropriately plain, while the inside held the most ornate gilding she had ever seen. The opulence would have shamed St. Francis, but Serafina loved it, just as she loved the quaint cobbled roads and the pink and mint-tinted dwellings where people lived and loved, worshipped and vexed, where housewives in flowered shifts leaned out their windows to smoke cigarettes, tattle on husbands, and shout rude remarks at young women like her. "Ha! Look at this! The tart has a package! Watch out, Olivia. That might be your daughter's brother in that blanket. Are you joking? I wear my man out." Serafina ignored their taunts and turned into the alley, a selling feature of Enrique's apartment that allowed them both to enter and leave from different roads, thereby maintaining his reputation. The neighbors knew, of course, there were no secrets in the Pellerino. As soon as she slipped inside, Serafina switched on all the lights. She loved the luxury of electricity. Her family bootlegged their power and only had enough to run a tiny refrigerator, a small television, and one hanging bulb. Nothing like this. Enrique's love nest had outlets and fixtures in every room, even the closet. Later, he would scold her for wasting money, but she could not resist. Everything looked so cheery in the imitation light, including Carlinhos. "You're beautiful, mi amor, but you need to be cleaned up before you meet your papa." She wiped the snot, changed the diaper, and had just laid him down for a nap when the keys jingled at the front entrance. Serafina raced for the couch. Enrique was particular about his welcome. While he loved the length of her limbs as she wrapped them around his hips, he did not appreciate her towering over him. "Where's my sexy Amazon?" His voice sent a shiver of fear and expectation up her spine. She had been without him for 6 months. Her body craved his touch. More importantly, her heart craved reassurance that one day she would become the wife of Gobernador Enrique Avora de Novas. She shifted on the couch with worry. Would her heavy breasts revolt him? Would her newly rounded ass make her look like an old fat cow? Bile rose from her churning belly and stung her throat. She swallowed it down. Now was not the time for childish insecurity. Enrique took a long look at her shapely form strategically arranged on the couch. "Linda, marvellosa, exactly how I want to see you." He shrugged off the linen jacket off his narrow shoulders and draped it meticulously over the back of the chair. Regardless of the season, Enrique always wore a suit. After smoothing out the wrinkles, he unknotted his tie and unbuttoned his shirt. The trousers came off as well. No matter how horny he was for her, Enrique never let his trousers pool at his ankles. He was an esteemed member of the Legislative Assembly of Bahia, not some whoring Joao nobody. Only when every article of clothing had been appropriately folded did he lower himself on top of her. Serafina sighed deeply as he kissed her neck and buried her face in her swollen bosom. During their long separation, she had tried to arrange a meeting in the usual way, a coded telephone call to his secretary, and had been told to wait until she was done. Serafina had cried for weeks over those words. She cried louder now as Enrique's thrust ripped through her newly healed flesh. She pressed her mouth against his chest and muffled the sound, and if not for the rules, would have clawed his back to shreds. Mercifully, it ended as abruptly as it had begun. Enrique grinned as he brushed the tears from his face. "How sweet! You are overcome with emotion." His misinterpretation nearly brought another surge of tears, but he kissed her quivering mouth and flashed his politician's smile. "Go and freshen up. There's food in the kitchen. You can fix us something to eat." Serafina nodded the familiar direction and rose, but instead of heading to the kitchen, she paused. "I brought your son to meet you." "Your son, mi amor. He's in our bed. Shall I go and get him?" Enrique groaned with what sounded like satisfaction and rolled onto his side for his post-ravishing nap. Deferred, but not resigned, Serafina headed to the kitchen. An hour later she stirred the pot and breathed in the perfect balance of palm oil, garlic, cloves, and simmering shellfish. Fine cooking was a skill Enrique appreciated almost as much as the things she did with her tongue. Had she not been so shocked by the pain of both post-birthing sex, she would have given him a lick of that skill as well. "Is that meal of yours ready yet?" he called from the couch. She covered the pot of moquesa and emerged from the kitchen clad only in a red bib apron and flawless skin. Her encounters with Enrique always followed the same agenda: a grunting sprint, a nap while she cooked, a sensual meal, and a marathon of deviant exploration. Serafina had other plans. She called over her shoulder as she headed for the bedroom. "Almost ready, but first a surprise." When she emerged, she found Enrique sitting on the couch, naked and aroused. One glance at the bundle in her arms, and his happy expectation deflated. "What the hell is that?" "Your son, mi amor. Carlinos avora de movas." She placed the bundle in his lap. Carlinos squirmed out of the blanket, blinking and gaping against the mucus that crusted his eyes and nose. "He is beautiful now. He has your mouth, and your nose too, I think." Enrique shook his head and held his hands apart so they wouldn't touch Carlinos. Serafina pushed them back. "Be careful, my love. You must hold him or he will wiggle off your lap." "No, but he is your son." "I said no." Enrique stood, forcing Serafina to grab Carlinos before he fell. "I have 3 sons, 3 healthy, handsome, legitimate sons. I don't want that thing. But enough!" The outburst upset Carlinos, which angered Enrique even more. "Get rid of it! Rid of it! Throw it away!" He brushed his groin as if a filthy residue remained and pulled on his pants. "I never want to see or hear of it again." She clutched Carlinos to her chest and ran for the bedroom before either of them could cry. Throw him away! How could Enrique say such a thing? Before she could answer, Carlinos nuzzled her breast and rooted for her nipple. The timing could not have been worse. She needed to fix herself up and soothe Enrique's fury, not nurse a baby. But when Carlinos couldn't get past the bib of her apron, he started to fuss. Soon he would cry. Then he would scream. She sighed and settled herself into a chair to nurse. They had only just begun to calm down when Enrique marched into the room and threw a wad of money onto the dresser. "Be here Friday, 1 o'clock, alone." He left the room and shut the door to the bedroom, the apartment, and her heart. Carlinos choked on her milk and gasped for the air. His jaundiced skin turned beet red as he struggled to breathe. How would he survive if he couldn't even eat? What a fool she had been. Carmen was right. She should have saved the name for a healthier baby. This one would be dead within the week. She laid Carlinos on the bed, put on her clothes, and stuffed the money into a bag. There was only one path for her out of the favelas. Education was great, but no one was going to hire a girl like her for a job that paid well enough to change her mind unless it involved cooking or fucking. Even then, she'd be stuck in the favelas like her mother and every other woman she knew from back home. Her only choice was to play the obedient slave, please her master, hoard every centavo Enrique gave her, and hope that one day she might be able to buy her freedom. As she cleaned the kitchen and dumped the uneaten moquesa, she tried not to think of Carlinos asleep on the bed. No, she corrected herself, the infant, unwanted and unnamed. She needed to distance herself from its unfortunate fate. She would have other sons. Give them his name, to one of them. No one would blame her. She was barely more than a child herself. Everyone knew the infant was doomed. By the time she finished cleaning, Serafina's heart was as cold and numb as her water-soaked hands. She returned to the bedroom for her things, folded the swaddling blanket to hide the infant's face, and picked it up and headed for the back door. Was it asleep? Was it dead? The thought did not alarm her as it would have this morning, when she still believed her future was bright. Throw it away. Enrique's words looped in her mind as she locked the door and headed to the garbage bins in the alley. She had only meant to toss in the diaper, but when she lifted the lid, she saw a perfect den for an unwanted soul. She pulled out the cardboard box of cast-off clothes and carried it to a neighbor's stoop and laid her bundle inside. Goodbye, little one. Someone will find you and give you the love you deserve. She walked away, covered her ears as it mewed. So intent was she on tuning out the infant's distress that she didn't notice the danger until the man slammed her into the wall. He bashed her head against a stone and yanked her bag on her arm. She couldn't see. She could hardly think. She wrapped her arms around her waist and hugged the bag tight as he pulled. The money inside the bag was all she had left. She screamed for help, but the sound wouldn't leave her throat. With nowhere to go, the cry drew in desperation and blew like a geyser from her mind. Help me! The force of it stole her breath and weakened her knees. The day was cursed. No one would come. Nobody cared. Help me! A blow to the face smacked away the last of her resolve. Not only would she never be free, she wouldn't even survive. Instead of slithering to the ground, robbed and stomped to death, a powerful strength entered Serafina and turned her despair into rage. The darkness cleared, the pain dissolved. Serafina's sight honed in on her attacker like a hunter to its prey, as unfamiliar thoughts entered her mind and spoke from her mouth of their own accord. "You dare touch me, you insignificant ant!" She grabbed the man by the throat and lifted him onto his toes. No one touches the queen of the wind and rain. No one defiles Yansa and lives. She hurled the man across the alley and screamed in fury when he only bounced against the stone. Her goddess force should have blasted him through the wall. Why was he even alive? She reached for her hunting knife and howled when she didn't find it strapped around her thigh of her jaguar hide pants. Serafina gripped her head and fought against the lunacy that had taken over her mind. Where were these thoughts coming from? Where had she found the strength to fight off that man? Before she could answer, her attacker crawled to his feet and fled. The power and ferocity that had filled Serafina left her in a rush. She crumpled to her knees, hugged the bag to her chest, and rocked it like a child. Someone had helped her. God? An angel? She tried to recall the name she had spoken, but it slipped from her mind like smoke. All she knew was that someone or something had cared. Was that all it took to save a life? Show up and care? Carlinos wailed from the stoop. He must have been crying this whole time, yet no one had come to help him. No one in the world would ever care for him. Serafina hurried back to the stoop and lifted her baby from the box of cast-off clothes. "Hush, Carlinos. Mama is here. I will protect you. I am strong enough for us both." There you have it. Dance Among the Flames, coming May 2022.